First off, there's a lot of talk about Vecna. We've had a couple of videos on Vecna and the lore of Vecna, and now Stranger Things has very much patterned their villain after D&D's Vecna as well. We have a dossier on Vecna, so we've statted out Vecna.
Indeed.
It's pretty terrifying.
So when we sat down to finally, build a 5th edition version of Vecna, we wanted to build something that was, that really honored what came before it. Vecna as a concept in D&D goes all the way back to, I believe, 1978, and one of the supplements for the original D&D rule set, Eldritch Wizardry. There have been different versions of Vecna over the years from that. In 2nd edition, there was whole modules named after Vecna. We were trying to, preserve that legacy, but also, give gamers something new and give them some new challenges and a new look at our favorite baddie.
And this Vecna is very dangerous. The CR rating is 26.
This Vecna is very dangerous, yes. So, Vecna, powerful wizard who turns into a lich and then becomes an Archlich. That's the version, by the way, that we stat, Vecna the Archlich. Vecna later ascends to godhood, and that's best left to its own thing. But very, very powerful. Vecna has a handful of very scary powers. Right off the bat, Vecna, as a reaction, has his own personal version of counterspell. Vecna automatically foils any spell of 5th level or lower that is cast against him. And it gets to make a pretty easy ability check to void higher level spells. But what makes that particularly frightening is he can do that up to 3 times per turn. So he can cancel out 3 spellcasters each round.
And then on top of that, damage is dealt.
Yes.
So spellcasters are very punished.
That is right.
Coming up against a lich.
It's hard to imagine taking him down with lots of magic spells. You're going to have to dig a little deeper than that and try a little harder than that. In addition, he has some pretty fearsome powers.
Yeah, because with Monsters of the Multiverse, there's still spell casting that's in this stat block, but there are very special abilities.
That's right. So Vecna is statted in our new style of building stat blocks, which means that while Vecna has the spell casting, attribute and has various spells he can cast, some of his more commonly used spells we've gone ahead and just detailed as actions in his stat blocks, or actions, reactions, what have you. As Jeremy's explained at great length, the idea there is to prevent the DM from having to, flip back and forth between 3 or 4 different books and look up what's happening during play, and make the stat block a little easier to run. Vecna has plenty of those things, like the counterspell I mentioned earlier, which is statted up as a unique reaction that he has. And by the way, this philosophy also allows us to work little twists into some of those abilities. So as we just talked about, Vecna's counterspell isn't quite the same thing as the spell. It's a little bit different, a little bit scarier. Yeah,
there's also an ability out there where Vecna essentially just summons a ton of spirits and shoots them at the enemy.
Yes. The Flight of the Damned, we call this. And Vecna, it's perhaps Vecna's most fearsome ability. And what the Flight of the Damned is about is, Vecna outstretches his arms and an army of spectral spirits is conjured and flies forth from his hands. And the army flies out in a cone and passes through all the living beings in that cone. So these specters just sort of pass through you and then dissipate, and everyone that it passes through is in for some damage, and in for some pretty terrible damage and some pretty awful effects.
Yeah, that's pretty much the theme of Vecna, is it's pretty awful, it's a lot of damage. Another ability is within 120 feet, everyone takes damage, and if they die this way, they themselves raise up as a zombie.
That's right, yes. That's another fun thing he can do to you. So, yeah, he's very powerful. He's sort of at the apex of kind of, mad wizards in D&D in this phase of his career.
And he has a couple of magical items as well. He's got a dagger, correct?
He's got a dagger named Afterthought. And I mentioned before that, when we were putting the stat block together, we went back and we looked at all the things that we know about Vecna that have been revealed or we think we know about Vecna from earlier editions. And I believe Afterthought dates back to the 3rd edition of D&D. I believe 3rd edition Vecna, Vecna has a foul dagger named Afterthought, and it has some similarities to the Sword of Wounding in D&D, which means basically he hits you with the dagger, it does a lot of damage, and it's very difficult to heal. The awful, foul, necrotic, terrible damage that he inflicts on you using that.
What was it fun putting this together to okay, what's the ultimate Vecna?
It was a blast, honestly, and it was a blast. First of all, it was super fun to revisit all that lore and reacquaint myself with everything that's been written about Vecna over the years. Vecna, one of the really special, interesting things about Vecna, by the way, and one of the reasons why I'm so pleased that Vecna, of all the D&D creatures, is sort of seeping into the pop culture now, thanks to Stranger Things, is Vecna was placed in D&D as an honor. One of the authors who's most influential over D&D, a science fiction author by the name of Jack Vance, who in his incredible novels, his incredible works, the way he depicts spellcasting was very influential over how spells operate in D&D. And as a tribute to Jack, they created this character Vecna, an anagram of Vance, and put him in the game. So, I like to think that, not only is Vecna getting all of this love and all of this attention, but that little tribute to Jack Vance keeps running after decades, and it's so appropriate and it's so fun.
It's also this, and now this Vecna also represents that he has gone beyond the typical lich of having a phylactery. Yes. They can still come back after.
That's right. This Vecna is an Archlich, and we talked about phylacteries a little bit while building the stat block. And what we decided is that Vecna is so powerful. Vecna is beyond phylacteries and is beyond all of that. In fact, perhaps Vecna's most fearsome power is even if you manage to kill him, even if you manage to defeat him, his hatred is so powerful, is so all-consuming. His hatred can never be vanquished, and out of sheer hate, he's just going to reassemble himself in 1d100 years after he's been killed. He's just going to manage to hate himself back into existence, and so you don't need no phylactery. He's good.
So you roll a 1d100, and depending on that roll, you could be back in a couple of years, or
generations.
Next campaign is in 100 years.
It could be, yes,
yeah.
And in fact, I'll let you in on a secret. 1d100 years is our code for whenever the DM wants.
Yeah.
DM, whenever you think it's appropriate, Vecna just hates himself back into existence.
Is it fun seeing Stranger Things draw more attention to D&D with their kind of takes on everything when it comes to the Mind Flayer and Demogorgon?
Oh, yeah.
And now we've got this version of Vecna. Obviously, it's not the D&D Vecna, but you can see a lot of a lot of the homages to it.
It's super fun, and honestly, the people who make Stranger Things, in the studio, we've had a lot of contact with them. They clearly love D&D, and they love these, they love Vecna, and they love these old concepts that they're bringing to their audience, and we so appreciate that. It is super fun. There's nothing like being a decades-long D&D fan and waking up one morning and seeing, top trending topics in the United States, Vecna, crazy.
Yeah, not something I thought you and I would see in our lifetime. Where can people get this dossier on Vecna? It is very unusual to see someone this powerful statted out. So this is on par with Tiamat.
Yes. I think Vecna could go toe-to-toe with Tiamat. And so where you get the dossier is if you're on D&D Beyond. It's free to everyone on D&D Beyond. You just go claim it. We, not long ago, we released the first Monstrous Compendium in conjunction with Spelljammer. This Vecna is like our second big sort of all digital release since we acquired D&D Beyond. And another thing that makes this exciting is, we're experimenting with what we can do now that DDB is part of the family and we have so much more of a digital bent and a digital focus. We know there's many more interesting things like this we can do, and we're going to go figure out what all those are.
Yeah, so you can download this at home, terrorize your players. Never a good sign.
Yes.
It's another thing to be afraid of for all D&D players.
It is indeed.
And
yes.
it's always fun to see these very powerful creatures, because we grew up with all the monster manual and deities and demigods.
Yeah.
And you get to see Thor statted out and all these
Yeah.
these famous characters, and to see Vecna in his prime.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is very alarming.
It's super fun. It is. And actually, I think just given the way D&D games typically work, I think most of the people looking at the Dossier are going to be just sort of like, wow, look at this cool wizard. You have to have a pretty special party to go up against him.
Yeah.
But it's very fun. I often I tell my team that I have a lot of business responsibilities on D&D, but I keep my hand in design too, and the design part is therapy for me. When I get to put all the business nonsense away and let's go design a character, design an adventure, that's the fun part for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show and talking about Vecna.
Thanks, Todd.
All right.
Great. Anytime.
Have a great one. Thanks, Ray.
Okay.
If you liked this interview and you'd like to see more, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that little bell symbol so you're notified anytime a video like this comes out. Thank you so much for watching.